Chapter 2. Hiccup pines, and Jack stages a jailbreak. It was a rare day off for Hiccup. He didn't have any training, smithy orders, or meetings he had to attend with his father. It was honestly a little jarring, and Hiccup had lain in bed that morning for an extra 30 minutes longer than usual before he couldn't take it any more and went to the forge to add some tweaks to Toothless's tail fin. Toothless groaned, but followed him dutifully before passing out again in his designated corner. Hiccup had rolled his eyes, but quickly gotten to work. He knew that big lug would be practically dragging him into the air once he actually woke up. That all went out the window, though, when Helga came barging into the shop only an hour or so later in near hysterics, dragging her daughter by the arm behind her. It dissolves quickly from there, with Helga yelling loud enough for nearly half the village to linger outside the building in curiosity. And nosiness, mostly that, Hiccup thinks, rubbing a space between his eyes.
"Hiccup, this new vetter we let onto our island is haunting the place. He nearly took my—"
Hiccup listens to the rant with a slow acceptance of his free day slipping away. The feeling was like a belt being tightened around his head. Just great. What a way to wrap up this already hectic week. Apparently, Lord Jack had tried to kidnap little Hilda by luring her into the deep woods along the other side of the island before using some of his spirit magic to steal her away forever.
"And when exactly did this happen?"
Hiccup asks, begrudgingly putting down his hammer.
"Yesterday. Poor lass was too struck to tell me about it until this morning. Inviting that thing to our home was a mistake."
Hiccup sighs, turning to look at Hilda. She seems no worse for wear, except for a small bruise on her forehead, only a light purple and healing fast. The little girl shifts nervously under her mother's hand, looking more like she got caught stealing sweets than like she was nearly abducted. He kneels to her level and kindly asks her to tell them everything that happened. The girl is more than happy to do so, sensing no punishment on the horizon.
"I was in the woods playing hide-and-seek,"
she mumbles, at least chagrined enough to know that the far woods were off limits without supervision. Even now, some of the wild dragons living there get spooked enough to be dangerous to a young child alone.
"I found a really good hiding spot, so no one found me, but then I couldn't find my way back."
She twists a boot into the floor, turning a little sheepish.
"I tripped and hit my head, but only a little. Mr. Jack found me, though, and said it's not unvikingly to cry. His hands were cold and made my head feel better, and then he walked me to the tree line. He said he couldn't walk me home, though, because Mama scares him."
Hiccup had to suppress a snort at the last comment. He thanks Hilda, who proudly puffs out her chest before standing and addressing Helga.
"So, just to recap," he says, "your daughter was in the woods already, got lost, and then Jack walked her home."
Helga bristles.
"He was going to take her,"
she throws back hotly.
"You know how spirits are." "No, I really don't,"
Hiccup replies, rubbing his forehead.
"Look, why would Jack want to kidnap a child? He's been nothing but helpful. Seems like the kids love him. He performed magic on Bucket. Who knows what his plans are? Bucket accidentally saw him and passed out. That was made very clear. Please don't say people still believe that."
"Well, it's hard to believe otherwise, when he's acting so suspicious towards our children. They come home with stories, too familiar to the tales of those child snatchers in the lakes for my liking."
"He probably shows himself to them because they don't pass out when they see him, or scream."
Helga huffs, grabbing her daughter by the shoulders.
"So you're just going to do nothing?"
Hiccup kind of wants to yell, "Yes, exactly," but takes a deep breath instead. No matter how tempting, he knows it won't help the situation. He straightens himself and takes a step forward.
"Look, you obviously know the tales. Think of it this way. Burke now has a shrine to Jack, and it's obvious he's been accepting our offerings. He's in agreement with Burke now. Why wouldn't he protect our children? He's not against us, Helga."
And it's true. Offerings at the shrine had begun to disappear. That was what had gotten Hiccup his new title as overseer in issues and logistics pertaining to their patron. It was an ongoing title. Anyways, Gothi and Stoic were nervous at the offerings left at the shrine, flowers dead and other gifts untaken. Hiccup had been the one to suggest different gifts, lots more edible goods, no weapons or things that willed under snow. Jewels were okay, but only if they were small enough to be worn. things like that. Hiccup refrained from saying how he knew these things, just awkwardly chalking it up to a hunch. He finds it rather funny that his dad is halfway convinced he's the new town prophet. But his suggestions worked. The offering table was now emptied of all their gifts semi-regularly, with Hiccup subsequently regularly feasting on Burke's best cooking, with Jack, when he came, cloak filled with muffins and other treats. Now he has meetings with Gothy about Jack, on top of his other duties. And now, whenever anyone gets frantic about Burke's newest guest, he has to sit down and explain to a bunch of paranoid Vikings that Jack's presence doesn't mean the beginning of Ragnarok. Some parts of the job are better than others. Helga chews on his words, and Hiccup counts it a victory that she's actually stopping to consider what he said. After a moment, she gives him a curt nod before striding back out of the forge. Gobber walks in from the back room after she leaves, hobbling over to the fire. "Well, you complain louder than a hungry babe about your new job, but you seem to handle it pretty well." Hiccup thunks his head against the work table, groaning. "I swear to Odin, Gobber, they reacted better to literal dragons moving into town than him. I just don't get it." "You have to know that there's a difference in these situations." "Yeah, plenty. For one, the dragons have rather sharp teeth and fire breath, claws." Gobber sighs, his tongue attachment clinking against the stone from when he had been moving around some melted ore. "Lad, you were shaking like a leaf when you first came back. I heard from Gothy myself. Don't even deny it." "But, let me finish. You have to understand that the dragons were easier because we fought them for centuries. Hiccup, if anything went wrong with the dragon, every person here, including half the children, know how to defend themselves. They don't know how to fight back against Lord Jack. They don't even know if they can. You have to give us old warriors a bit longer to catch up with you." That... Hiccup doesn't have an argument against that. He even almost understands it. He runs a hand through his hair, reaching for one of the tail joints. "Yeah, okay. There's a good lad." Hiccup rolls his eyes, walking over to reheat the joint in the fire. He pauses, looking over at Gobber. "You're not scared of him, are you?" Gobber pours out the metal, grumbling, "I think he's a lot more dangerous than you're saying." He glances at Toothless, napping in the corner. "But no, I trust you." The minute Hiccup was finished with his new tweaks, he threw himself onto Toothless as they snapped into the air, shooting like an arrow out from Burke and over the sea. He sees the bodies lingering around the forge turn into just small pinpricks and can't help from heaving a sigh of relief. There are other things that Hiccup wants to do with his day than listen to complaints about whose sheep are on whose land and about how he thinks he should be handling the new patron. Besides, if Jack was spotted yesterday, then he's likely to pay Hiccup a visit soon. The thought sends a smile over Hiccup's face, and he flicks the tail fin into a new position, Toothless roaring out over the sea in excitement as they dive. He leans low over Toothless's body, eyes watering against the slicing wind, gasping out cackles into the barrel rolls and turns. He's long ago lost that feeling of being dragged by the wind, its sharp claws trying to rip him from Toothless's back, gravity fighting to return him to the ground. Now it rolls over him smooth, welcoming, seeing no difference between the man and the dragon slicing through his skies. Now he leans into the turns as well, gravity something to run his fingers through in these moments rather than a force to fight against. It lifts the weight in his chest that has been growing all week, and soon he's singing right beside Toothless to the flight and the churning waves of the endless dotted clouds. It's not until over an hour later that they're both panting and content, sailing over the early afternoon sunrays. Hiccup lays on his back, staring up at the grey sky, when Jack comes skimming along beside them. Toothless calls out a greeting, and Hiccup turns his head to see Jack mirroring his position, air currents rippling under him as his body rolls to the movement. A warmth hums pleasantly in his chest when he sees that Jack's still wearing his two gifts. From the day he gave them, he doesn't think he's seen Jack without at least one article on, thumbing the sleeves like he still wants to rub his cheek against the texture. A few knickknacks picked up from Burke dangle around him as well, necklaces tight enough to withstand the wind, and bracelets tinkling against each other musically around his pale wrists. His head is near Toothless's, and he whistles a happy tune to the reptile, who yips and then tries to copy him, sound wavering. Jack laughs, a delighted smile adorning his face, drifting further back towards Hiccup.
"Didn't think you'd be free to see me again so soon," he calls out.
Hiccup shrugs, smile pressed against his shoulder.
"Slow day,"
he says simply.
"Slow?
Oh, well, we'll have to fix that then, won't we?" Jack replies, smile turning impish. Before Hiccup has a chance to react, Jack leans over and taps him with his staff, a few snowflakes puffing out at the contact. "Tack," he says, suddenly dropping from the sky like a stone, hurtling towards the water below. Hiccup and Toothless share a look, eyes brightening.
"Oh, it's so on,"
Hiccup calls out, sitting up as they fall into a dive. They slowly gain on Jack, both plummeting towards the ocean. Hiccup and Toothless's eyes grow narrow as they draw closer. These past few weeks, Jack has been dancing circles around the two, literally. It's one thing to fly on the wind, another to be embraced wholly within it, letting yourself go completely to its whims. However, when they had first begun to see each other, Jack would simply glide next to them. Everything smooth, simple, planned. Hiccup had taken one look at his maneuvers when they played that first time and knew Jack was holding himself back. He admits to being slightly annoyed at the time, showing off a bit more than usual, trying to make it clear that they could keep up with the spirit. The look of glee nearly overtaking Jack's face as he watched their onslaught of tricks swept away the irritation, but just left the confusion. It wasn't until a week or so after that first flight that it all clicked for Hiccup. He had snuck Jack into the smithy for a tour after Jack demanded to see all the inventions Hiccup had shown him in his sketchbook. Jack was perched on the table like a bird, studiously ignoring the chair Hiccup had specifically offered him, and was shooting him questions about his latest flight suit that had his hands tingling in excitement when a noise startled them both. Jack's head had snapped to the sound, a little too quick and a little too far around for a human. The temperature of the room dropped a good 10 degrees within the span of a breath, and Jack's eyes glowed against the shadows. All of his edges sharpened, miniature ice shards rippling out of his skin, so small they wouldn't have been noticeable at all. But Hiccup was staring at him very closely in that moment. Jack seemed to come back to himself not a second later, looking mortified. Hiccup didn't have the chance to ask, as the sound was Gobber coming into the shop to retrieve something, and in the next second Jack was gone to the winds. Another puzzle piece of Jack fit into place then. The next time they found themselves flying together, Hiccup had taken one look at Jack and said, "I know you can do better than that. Show us what you really got." Jack had slowed, hesitant. Hiccup just rolled his eyes before whipping by him, Toothless's tail whacking him in the face and sending him spinning. Jack had let out a yelp, righting himself before narrowing his eyes at the two. Hiccup may have turned to stick his tongue out, but it had the desired effect in the end. Ever since then, Toothless and him had been struggling to catch up to the winter spirit, and they couldn't be more delighted at the challenge. Now, plummeting towards the water below, Hiccup and Toothless watched the twitches of Jack's body for his next move. They have to straighten out sooner than him, not being able to cut it as close against the sea. But it could be an advantage if they can guess which way he'll turn. His head tilts a fraction towards some rock columns in the distance. Hiccup grins wildly. Got him. Toothless's wings shoot out 12 feet above the water, catching them as they bank. Jack himself just cackles as he continues plummeting. When he's close enough to dip a toe into the churning waves, he gets jerked suddenly to the right, with enough force to break a man's ribs, twirling and tumbling over his gangly limbs. His body flips over just in time to see Toothless and Hiccup right on top of him, black blotting out the sun. He squawks, then explodes into a burst of powdered snow right as Hiccup reaches him. "Oh, gosh!" Hiccup spits out some snow, glaring in the general direction where he can hear the howling laughter. "That still counts, you know," he shouts. Jack appears again beside him, tinkling bracelets ringing before he forms. "Aw, Hick, I didn't take you for a sore." Before Jack can finish, Hiccup taps his forehead, having already reached out towards the sound. "Gotcha," he says, smug. Jack's eyes narrow. "Oh, you little sneak." He smiles, and then Hiccup is off, weaving like a needle with Toothless through the rock pillars, their bodies shaking from the force of the tight turns. Jack's taunting voice tight on their heels. They find themselves on another pillar, sprouting out from the sea in the late afternoon, large enough for a few grass tufts and a single persistent spruce, roots cradling the broken rocks. Jack bickers at Hiccup on who actually won their game, and Hiccup just hums unamused in the right places, easily ruffling Jack's feathers, who begins to defend his honor with increased incredulity. Toothless burns himself a ring in the rock to lie down, watching Jack's waving staff with lazy eyes. Jack pauses just for a moment to get a good look at Hiccup's face, and something on it must have given him away, because Jack stops and points his staff at him. "Hey, wait a minute!" He tries to sound affronted, but can't stop from chuckling between his words. "You're just riling me up." Hiccup goes to sit down against Toothless's side.
"Oh? Whatever do you mean?"
"No, that was just terrible. Never get into gambling. Your poker face is atrocious." Hiccup snorts, and Jack takes a seat next to him, Toothless rumbling before draping his tail over them both. Hiccup watches as he strokes a hand over Toothless's scales, carefully shifting his staff so it doesn't poke against the dragon's side. And that warm feeling blooms again in his chest at the sight. Like early morning sun rays, rare as those may be in a cloudy place like Berk. He doesn't quite know what to do about a feeling like that, so he leans over and knocks their shoulders, but frowns when he sees Jack stiffen slightly at the contact.
"You all right?"
he asks.
Yeah, I'm,
Yeah, sorry." Jack's toes dig slightly into the loose pebbles. Hiccup looks at him for a moment longer before staring out at the slowly settling sun. He stays silent, but hums, giving Jack the space to answer or not. He's pushed a few times in the past, and Jack had promptly run for the hills before slinking back a week or so later, body tense, just waiting for any comments. Hiccup had been ragged with worry those times, and nearly collapsed with relief when Jack actually returned. He spent days thinking he somehow messed everything up. Since then, he started applying logic used for skittish feral dragons to Jack, and it's almost funny how well they transfer over in some cases. "It's nice, it's just new." Hiccup tilts his head back towards Jack, watching as his face scrunches in thought. "Usually everyone's either trying to kill me or run off, so—" Jack trails off, biting his lip. Hiccup frowns at that, and Jack winces, making him frown deeper. He leans over and knocks their shoulders again, softer this time. Jack stiffens again, but after a moment he melts slightly, leaning into Hiccup's side. He still looks hesitant, and there's a light dusting of hoarfrost across his cheeks that Hiccup can't quite figure out, but he's smiling again. Hiccup brushes some snow off his lap, spilled over from his shoulder.
"Well, if anyone bothers you, they'll have to go through us now,"
he says, decisive. Jack lets out a breath. His eyes are far away, ruminating. He's interesting in that way, Hiccup muses. Talkative enough to chat the ear of a log, but then there's moments like this, when he leaves, his mind elsewhere. Hiccup doesn't know where he goes, has thought about how it's usually not a pleasant place from the way it dulls his eyes. He half wants to ask, see if he can take him somewhere brighter, but knows how flighty Jack gets when those kinds of things aren't done on his terms. "Frost." Hiccup shakes himself from his thoughts.
"What?"
"I'm Jack Frost," Jack says, quiet, voice thin. Hiccup raises an eyebrow.
"Why did you avoid giving us that?"
he asks. No accusation, just curiosity. Jack lets out a frustrated whine. "I don't know, everyone knows Jack Frost. He leaves a mess everywhere he goes. But you don't know me, so I don't know. I thought maybe I could just be Jack." Hiccup's lips pull into a thin smile, silent for a moment.
"Well, whoever says that must be jackasses."
Jack huffs a laugh, eyes trained on the ground. Hiccup nudges him until he looks up, leaning slightly to catch his eye.
"I'm serious. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm glad to have met you, Jack Frost."
Jack's mouth hangs open slightly, eyes darting around Hiccup's face, like he's analyzing him, looking for something, trying to catch him in a lie. But when he finds nothing but sincerity written on Hiccup's face, the hoarfrost from before brushes itself across his cheeks, almost crackling, mouth tilting into a smile. "I'm glad I met you too," he murmurs, gazing at Hiccup with happiness and something else Hiccup can't quite place, something that glistens his eyes. Hiccup has to turn away from a look like that before his whole face starts burning. "Oh, wait!" Jack exclaims suddenly, sitting upright before reaching in his cloak. He leans against Hiccup while one hand digs around his pockets, and then Hiccup really does erupt in a flush from his neck all the way across his cheeks, Jack's coolness pressed into his side, doing nothing to stop Hiccup from feeling all of a sudden warmer than he ought to be. Some part of him wants to wrap an arm around the spirit and tilt him closer, and he furrows his brows at the thought. Something else to figure out later, he supposes. Jack pulls something out from one of the inside pockets. "Here," he says. "It's for you. I almost forgot to give it to you." There, cradled against Jack's palms, is a perfect replica of Toothless etched into ice. Hiccup stares at it in shock, long enough for Jack to have to wave it slightly before Hiccup reaches out and gingerly takes it.
This is beautiful,"
he breathes, holding it up close to his face, eyeing the way each individual scale skims over the ice, glittering in the sun. "It won't melt, either," Jack says, nearly wiggling with how proud he looks of himself. Hiccup leans back, hands lowering to his lap as he continues to stare.
"Thank you,"
he says, eyes never leaving the sculpture. Jack nailed the prosthetic, too, down to every bolt. How long did he have to observe them to get every detail right? Jack smiles, satisfied, pulling something else out of his cloak. "Cookie?" he asks, stuffing one into his mouth, holding the other out. Before Hiccup can answer, Toothless immediately perks up, crushing Hiccup's chest with his neck as he leans over to sniff at the offering. Hiccup curls the sculpture protectively into the crook of his elbow, wheezing, and shoves against Toothless's head, who ignores his entire existence.
"Toothless!"
he hisses, and Jack bursts into laughter. Hiccup can't find it in himself to be mad. It's that night, when Hiccup's just drifting off to sleep, wondering somewhere far off in his fuzzy haze what Jack's cool skin would feel like when he jerks up in bed. Toothless pops open an eye, murmuring a question.
"Oh, but I'm so screwed,"
he whispers roughly, grabbing at his hair. Toothless rolls his eyes before drifting back to sleep. And Hiccup doesn't want to know how obvious he is if a literal dragon figured it out before him. It's the middle of some weapon drills that Snotlout casually calls out. "So, are we all just going to ignore the fact that Hiccup got the whole town convinced a god's moved into Berk?" Hiccup chokes on air at the comment, and Snotlout snickers before being slammed in the stomach by the butt end of Astrid's axe. "Stop getting distracted," she barks.
"It's a valid question. I, for one, am curious about our new ethereal overlord,"
Toughnut says. He's flat on his back, balancing a dagger on his nose, not even pretending to be paying attention to whatever Astrid had been teaching.
"He's not our new overlord,"
Hiccup argues feebly.
"Yeah, he's obviously here to study us, figure out how humans interact before assimilating himself into our ranks. Take us out from the inside,"
Roughnut says.
"Oh, yeah, he could be any one of us,"
Toughnut crows, groaning when the knife falls over, barely missing his eye.
"Oh, come on, Hiccup is so obviously lying. I mean, really? Vat here mysteriously saves him, and then he decides that this Lord Jack wants baked goods for offerings? It's a little genius, I must admit. But I'm mad you're not sharing the spoils with us, Hiccup. I mean, come on," Snotlout says, leaning against his sword. Astrid growls at him, but does glance over at Hiccup, giving him a questioning look. Astrid's the only one he's told about his newfound friendship, and Hiccup's honestly surprised that she's listened to him rant about Jack for weeks without a single shred of doubt to his existence. He still wonders every now and then if she just thinks he's crazy and is just rolling with the punches.
"Hiccup wouldn't do something like that,"
Fishlegs interjects.
"Thanks, Fishlegs,"
Hiccup sighs.
"Look, can we just go back to drilling?"
Everyone but Astrid gives him a weird look at that. Snotlout stops leaning on his sword, grinning.
"Oh, well, now I'm interested," he says.
Hiccup furrows his eyebrows, shifting his feet.
"What? You never like weapons drills, especially Astrid's weapons drills,"
Fishlegs says, at least sounding a little guilty about it.
"Wait, what?"
Astrid asks roughly, turning to Hiccup.
Whoa,
Hiccup waves his hands.
"I have never talked bad about your weapons drills, Astrid."
"Don't have to,"
Ruffnut chimes in, Cheshire grin planted right on her face. You look like a wet cat stuck out in the rain every time we have them. It's honestly pretty funny to watch. Astrid raises her eyebrows at him. Hiccup rubs his arm.
Well, hand-to-hand combat just isn't exactly my thing. We all know this,
he mumbles.
Oh yeah, the entire archipelago knows it. So, your words are a little suspect, dear cousin. Oh my gods, wait.
Snotlout's face goes slack.
Holy Thor, Jack actually exists, doesn't he?
Glad to finally have you caught up with the rest of us, Snotlout.
Astrid deadpans, running a hand down her face.
Look, can we just talk about this later?
No, why haven't any of us seen him? That's no fair. You got to meet a god,
Snotlout whines.
Snotlout, he's not a god.
Yeah? How do you know?
He said so. Now, can we please just... Wait!
Fishlegs cut in. Hiccup groans.
During the village meeting, Stoic said we didn't know what he was.
Hiccup stiffens, and Astrid huffs before putting her axe down, leaning an elbow on the handle. It's not a good sign when even Astrid gives up on continuing training, Hiccup thinks glumly. Fishlegs gasps.
You've talked to him again. Oh, Hiccup, tell me everything. What does he look like? What are his powers? Why is he interested in Burke's children?
Hiccup sends a pleading look to Astrid, who just raises an eyebrow. Great. He sighs.
White hair, blue eyes, slightly shorter than me. He looks just like us, Fishlegs. Well, when he wants to.
Hiccup tacks on at the end absent-mindedly.
What's that supposed to mean?
Ruffnut asks, leaning forward.
Well, he...
Hiccup pauses. He's not quite sure where the line in Jack's comfortability is on the subject. He knows it's a thin one, and he doesn't want to tell them something Jack would be tense about. It's taken long enough just to build up trust with the spirit in the first place. It's a fragile thing, what he's built with Jack, and the thought of breaking it sends an ache in his chest. He weighs his words carefully before continuing.
Some of his powers are with the wind. He says the wind is a friend of his. So when he doesn't want to be, corporeal, he can turn into snowflakes. Ride the wind that way, I think. He didn't really give me a full explanation of that.
There's a beat of silence, then Fishlegs squeals, pulling out his notebook and scribbling something down.
That's so cool. Imagine how many pranks you can play without a body,
Tuffnut says, grinning wildly at the thought.
Yeah, please don't give him any more ideas. He's trouble enough as it is,
Hiccup grumbles.
That's even better. Another student of Loki. Imagine what we could do together with him, sister. Wait, was he the one who buried Mildew's house in like 10 feet of snow a few weeks ago, when all we got was a light dusting?
Tuffnut asks, face lighting up even before he gets an answer. Hiccup whines somewhere in his throat, and Ruffnut jumps to her feet.
Oh my gods, he totally is, she cheers, turning to Tuffnut. We totally need to meet this guy. Man, I wonder what other powers he has. Can he shoot ice? Oh, can he freeze people to the ground? Imagine the possibilities.
He probably is the one who brings devastating winter. How is everyone so okay with this?
Snotlout yells. Fishlegs looks up from his notebook, frowning.
That is a good question. How much control does he have over the weather?
Hiccup grimaces.
All right, Astrid shouts. Break's over. Fishlegs, Ruffnut, you're up next for sparring. Snotlout, you're with me until you last more than 30 seconds.
Everyone collectively groans, but Hiccup just breathes a sigh of relief as things turn back to semi-normal. His distress must have gotten quite visible if Astrid shut everyone down like that. He sends her a grateful look, and she nods once before turning away. Hiccup has a feeling this conversation is far from over, but for now he's glad to have some time to collect his thoughts. Sure enough, Astrid corners him right after practice, sliding right up to walk beside him. Toothless and Stormfly make a game of hopping from tree to tree above them.
So, why hasn't he met anyone yet?
She asks, skipping all pretense, ripping the bandage straight off. While Hiccup still hates these kinds of conversations half the time, he can appreciate that she says exactly what she means. Hiccup doesn't need to guess on what Astrid's opinion on the matter is.
Well, you saw how well that went with Bucket.
Astrid snorts, then quickly tries to hide the reaction behind a frown.
I'm serious, Hiccup. Yeah, I know. Honestly, Astrid, I think he's scared.
Astrid scoffs.
Scared? From what you've told me, he can level this entire island twice over if he really wants.
Hiccup stops, turning towards her.
I don't mean like that. He just... From what I can get, everyone has either hated him or been terrified. You know how Vikings can be. I think he's scared that Berk's going to react the same way. And I can't exactly blame him.
Astrid hums, face lax in thought.
Can I see some sketches of him? You've never shown me any. How do you know I have any?
Astrid just gives him her best, unamused look. Hiccup takes a second to sigh dramatically before pulling out a sketchbook in defeat. Astrid nicks it with a triumphant smile, continuing a leisurely pace.
Oh, wow,
she says, eyeing one of his drawings of Jack's face. It's a close-up. Hiccup had been trying to get the eye skin and blue eyes just right. He narrows his eyes at the piece. The cheekbones are a little off, and the jawline isn't right. He'll need to redo that later. She slowly turns to page after page of Jack, him lounging on the wind with his staff like he's laying in a meadow, him against the warm, smithy light, the red from the fire giving him purple highlights against his blue hue, one of his hands weaving ice like a spider's web.
Oh my God, Hiccup,
she says flatly. Hiccup turns to her, confused.
What? You totally have a big fat crush on him, don't you?
Hiccup chokes on his spit, squawking,
What?
Astrid's face lights up in a strange mixture of rage and glee, jabbing him in the chest.
You so do. Leave it up to you to go crushing on a Vatir. Do you even know how old he is? Only you, Hiccup, I swear to Odin.
Hiccup rubs his chest, his whole face lit up in a blush. He starts trying to deny everything, but one look from Astrid has him choking back the words. He huffs.
What's wrong with Jack? He's a good person,
he says indignantly, trying to regain whatever's left of his pride.
He's not a person at all, Hiccup. You can't be serious.
Seems human enough to me.
Yeah, right now. Hiccup, you've told me yourself about some of his less-than-human qualities. You can't really think he's all rainbows and sunshine.
What's that supposed to mean?
Hiccup retorts, stands turning defensive. Astrid growls out a sigh, holding her hands up.
I'm just saying you need to be careful, Hiccup. You know I worry about you. Yeah, Jack seems nice now, but there has to be some reason for all these cautionary tales we have.
You haven't met him, Astrid. He's not going to go crazy and kill everyone or whatever those stories say.
Astrid's face lights up just like when she sees an opening her opponent left during combat. Hiccup's eyes widen at the look. He feels this conversation slipping from his control fast.
All right,
Astrid says.
Then I'll meet him.
What?
Hiccup chokes out, still trying to catch up.
There's been some new activity of hunter ships out near Dragon's Edge. I got a report from Mala. We're going out there for a week to check it out, make sure no new groups are trying to set up shop near our waters.
Hiccup pinches his nose.
And when exactly were you planning on telling me this?
Soon,
Astrid chips, way too happy with herself.
Have Jack stop by while we're there. Astrid, it'll just be us. No one else from Berk to freak on him. And everyone already wants to meet him.
Astrid gives him a stern look.
You can't just let him hide away forever. You're the one telling me about how he seems lonely.
Hiccup grumbles under his breath. He wants to argue, but they both know Astrid is right. If Jack's going to keep hanging around, he can't stay invisible to Berk forever. Hiccup doesn't want Jack to stay invisible.
All right,
Hiccup eventually sighs. Astrid shoots him a look like she knew he was going to cave from the get-go. Hiccup just snorts before snatching his notebook back. They're in the village now, Toothless and Stormfly switching from tree-hopping to house-hopping.
And don't think we're done talking about this either,
Astrid says, pointing to his book, smug.
All right, we're done here,
Hiccup hastily says, spinning on his heel and walking away.
You can't hide forever,
Astrid sing-songs behind him, and Hiccup's shoulders scrunch up to his ears as he disappears into the forge. If there's one thing Astrid knows, it's that Hiccup Haddock will forever stupefy her. He's the smartest idiot she's ever met, simultaneously prideful while whipping out self-depreciating jokes like his own self-worth is joke enough, and somehow the most flexible and stubborn man in existence. She didn't understand him when they were younger, she never fully understood him when they were dating, and even now, years later, as best friends, there are still moments where she has to stop and really work through what could be going on in that boy's head. He's a clash of contradictions, and finding the lines where his opinions change is just as hard as herding stray cats. There's one thing that is consistent, though, and it's his malleable way of looking at life. He sees one friendly dragon and immediately works to change his whole worldview like it's the easiest thing in the world. Astrid just knows he's going to spend the rest of his life dragging Burke behind him while they all stumble to catch up to his views. It's something she's accepted and has worked on herself, no matter how painful. In all honesty, she prefers to throw axes at her problems. Simple, often solves them pretty quick, and it's something she's good at. Hiccup, on the other hand, looks at his problems and tries to turn them into solutions. It's one thing she will never stop being impressed by, and one thing she will never fully grasp as nimbly as he seems to in any given moment: diplomacy. Hiccup may not be the most powerful, but he certainly has enough wit, silver tongue, and hopeful outlook on life to make him perfect for diplomacy. Which is why she has bitten her tongue and actually tried to listen when Hiccup had crawled up to her room one day and finally spilled about his encounter with the spirit. Well, mostly. She had only hit him a little, which she counted as a win, considering how absolutely stupid he is. Anyways, whatever way Hiccup thought that talk would end was apparently better than he originally expected, because he kept coming back afterwards. This time without pre-planning, and more just to rant or gush about this new Lord Jack. Or just Jack, which she immediately picked up on. She knows Hiccup doesn't notice the dropped honorifics whenever he speaks of him. It's honestly a fun game she plays with Stormfly, watching the way everyone has a mild conniption about his casual addressing of their new spiritual resident. Hiccup always looks at their twitching eyebrows, assumes it has something to do with Jack himself, and begins hotly defending the man, only increasing the uncomfortableness of whoever's unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end. It's been the best entertainment on Burke for the past couple months. Anyways, after hearing enough ramblings on the potential changes to the world Jack's presence might mean, to how useful his powers could be for Burke, slowly transforming to rants on how complicated and confusing the man was, which seemed a bit hypocritical of Hiccup considering his everything, Astrid thinks she has a pretty good idea on who Jack is. Or on who Hiccup thinks Jack is, which may or may not be accurate to the truth. Hiccup would go on a spiel about how she needs to be more trusting if he ever heard this, but not everyone in the archipelago is willing to turn aside their differences, hold hands, and sing Kumbaya while braiding flower crowns for their dragons. She doesn't trust Jack. She doesn't know what angle he's playing. She doesn't even understand what he wants from them, and that puts her on edge. He's a Vatir, maybe even something more powerful. If he wanted power, he could have taken it twice over by now, easily. That thought doesn't escape most other warriors on Burke, and she sees the slight tense of their shoulders same as hers. If he wanted money, he wouldn't have turned down all their fancy gifts, and if he wants dragons, then Astrid can't fathom why, because he can already fly and beat people into submission all on his own if he really wanted to. She doesn't understand Jack. But for some reason, clouded by his own feelings as it may be, Hiccup trusts him. And she's decided to give Jack the benefit of the doubt because of this. Mostly. She still wants to meet him, come to her own conclusions, ask him a few questions, see what cards he plays. And also, she can't lie, she's curious. Part of her still wonders if he's just a normal man. She trusts Hiccup with her life, but some of the things he says just seem too fantastical. She can't help it. It's why she hides Mala's note until she can spin a meeting. It's why she trains during all her spare time with Stormfly up until the departure date. And it's why, when she hears a muffled conversation echoing from Hiccup's outdoor forge the night they arrive at the edge, she sneaks up to listen. Her back's pressed against the side of his house, and she stands there staring out into the night, straining to catch their drifting words. "When did you guys even build this place?" a deep voice asks. It's smooth but rocky like river stones, the roughness washed out with still enough of an edge to catch her out some words. The way it travels on the wind is almost as if it's cradled. Hiccup's chuckle carries over her way.
Oh, years ago, I really wanted to go out, expand my map, I don't know, find adventure, which we definitely did. Got in a bit over our heads at some points. Eventually, we migrated back, though. Now this is just a forward operating base for whenever we need it.
Cool. The voice breathes and Hiccup hums.
I bet it doesn't even scratch the surface to where you've been, though. I still don't know about your, what were they called, continents? Seems strange something could be that big.
Jack, because who else could it be, laughs. The sound is bright, a little bit at Hiccup, but without any malice behind it. It's a friendly laugh. Oh, they're out there all right. And the ones I've told you about are just the smaller ones. There's some places even I haven't been to, oceans that swallow up months before you see land. Hiccup seems to sit with that.
Can I ask you something?
He eventually asks, steady but soft. It's the voice he uses when he knows he's towing a line and trying to be gentle about it. It has Astrid straightening from a relaxed position. Shoot.
I remember you saying people down there don't see you, but we do up here. What do you mean by that?
Don't see him? Lots more axes pointed at my throat up here. Really makes a guy feel seen.
Well, that's just the Viking way of saying hello.
They both chuckle. Nothing more is said. Hiccup doesn't try and push another topic or press his question. The silence that follows is heavier than before. It stretches, and Astrid can hear Hiccup start to clang on some new project or another. It has Astrid almost growling in frustration. She's weighing whether she should slink off or show herself when Jack finally speaks up. His voice drifts in again, and the clanging noises immediately cease. Remember how I said I don't really know what I am? Astrid perks up.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of that. There are different types of beings, from what I can tell. Some are elementals. Apparently they're brought forth from Mother Nature or some being close enough to her, made from the very elements they encompass. Then some beings thrive on belief magic. Those are rarer. It's a fickle thing. If you have it, it's one of the most powerful things in the world, but without it, you're nothing.
You said you were made from money,
Hiccup says, starting to work things through. Yeah, I'm still close enough to the elementals in a lot of ways, though. But I think I also have some of that belief magic in me. Problem is, no one believes in me. Jack chokes slightly on the last part, coughing. They walk right through me, literally. I'm invisible. First time someone saw me was up here. There was this little girl who thought I was some kind of elf. Her mother saw me too, though. Got in some nasty hits that bruised my pride more than anything before the wind carried me away.
Well, then they believed in you, though, right? If they saw you?
Astrid scrunches her eyebrows at the exchange. She knows there's some piece she's missing, but she's thinking the same as Hiccup. Except when Hiccup says it, there's a bit of hesitance there, like something stopping him from fully accepting that. No, it's not as simple as that. I don't know why, but up here there's enough stories on things similar to me for you to see me. Doesn't mean you believe in me, just beings like me, I guess. To be honest, I don't really know either. It's better than nothing, though. Then Jack's chuckling, the sound way down.
But you said beings without belief magic are nothing. Oh, but you're not completely reliant on belief, is that it? Because you might be part elemental.
Ding, 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 right on the nose. Hiccup scoffs, the sound barely making it to Astrid's ears. He hums.
Well, I believe in you. And Burke believes in you now, so there's that.
There's a pause. Yeah, Jack whispers, almost choking. There's that. The silence that follows is a bit lighter, organic.
You know, if you don't want to meet them, I can push it off. I don't want to force you into anything.
A light sniff. Thanks, Hick. I'm good, though. They're your friends. Can't be all bad.
Yeah, you say that now,
Hiccup says, chuckling. Astrid narrows her eyes into the darkness. She was planning on just eavesdropping for a bit before turning in. She got what she wanted, some new knowledge under her belt, and an idea on how Jack acts, but making up her mind, she straightens up and rounds the corner. "Hey, Hiccup," she says casually, stepping into the firelight. Jack whips around to her figure and lets out a slight shriek. Both his hands are holding his staff, and his grip turns white-knuckled. A flash of blue light skitters down the wood and jumps from the base, splashing onto the ground like sparks, icing the whole floor. Hiccup's prosthetic immediately slips, and he flails for a second before landing flat on his ass. Astrid pauses for a moment, looking at the ground, processing. It's one thing hearing about Jack's powers, another seeing them up close. She feels off-footed in a way she hasn't in a long time. "Thanks for the heads-up, Wind. Real helpful today, aren't you?" Jack hisses to the night air. Toothless stands, wandering over to Hiccup, chuffing. The dragon looks more amused at the situation than anything. Astrid forces her stance to relax at the observation. Jack whirls back around to Hiccup as he pushes himself up from Toothless's offered head. He stumbles over 3 different apologies all at once while he taps the ground with his staff. The ice flows back into the wood like water, and soon everything is okay again, except for the slight frost curling on the table around Jack's perched form. He pulls up his hood, shrinking a bit into himself.
"I'm okay, Jack, really. Hello to you too, Astrid,"
Hiccup says dryly, waving off Jack's words.
"What brings you around?"
"Oh, I just wanted to visit before turning in," she shrugs, openly eyeing the curled form of Jack half hidden in the shadows. Hiccup raises an eyebrow, and she holds his stare, lifting her chin. Toothless rolls his eyes, which he definitely learned from Hiccup, before climbing up an errant support beam to sit. Hiccup turns away first, like he always does, waving a hand towards Jack. Jack's eyeing her like a cornered animal, all wide-eyed and nervous. It makes whatever surprise is still twirling in her gut at his display earlier dissipate. He looks about as scary as a terrible terror right now.
"Jack, this is Astrid. Astrid, this is Jack,"
Hiccup introduces, nudging her shoulder, eyes begging her to play nice. "So, you're the one we had to haul rocks down a mountain for," she says, neutral. Hiccup chokes, and Astrid can't help but feel a bit satisfied. Jack, though, doesn't shrink back from the comment. In fact, after a slight pause, he leans forward, more into the light, a small smile growing on his face. "And you're the one whose mother makes me those lovely sweetbreads." "You're damn right I am. And you better be kissing her feet, too, after all the things she's been baking for you."
"Astrid,"
Hiccup hisses. Jack barks out a laugh. "I'll make sure to keep that in mind." He hesitates a moment before pulling his hood back down, hooking an arm around his staff to lean forward. "Jack Frost, nice to meet you," he says, holding a hand out. Astrid narrows her eyes, but steps forward, grasping him solidly at the elbow. She nearly jumps at the chill seeping from him. "Astrid Hofferson." She lets go and turns to Hiccup, who looks like he's beaming from happiness. Yeah, we're all friends. We're still on for the morning patrol, right?" Hiccup huffs, smile staying firmly in place.
"Yeah, I'm having all of us go. Stretch out, test the waters. We'll be back by the afternoon. Jack said he'll stop by then."
"Might explore a little while you're all out playing scouts," Jack adds, crooked smile stretching on his face. Astrid frowns. That smile doesn't promise anything good. She's seen enough similar to it right before the twins explode half the island. The fact that they're leaving the base unprotected and open with a stranger rubs her the wrong way, too. A stranger to her, at least. She points her axe right at Jack's throat. "You go near my hut and we'll be having words, spirit." Jack chuckles, chin lifted slightly from the axe tip, looking impishly down at her. "Oh, scared of little old me?" Astrid gives him a few points in the back of her mind. If anything, he can take a threat well enough. From what she overheard, that seems to be normal for most of his interactions up here. Better than nothing, he had said. That has her lowering her axe. You're skinnier than Hiccup. I could snap you like a toothpick." Astrid deadpans, voice less hostile.
"Thanks, real original,"
Hiccup drawls, crossing his arms. Jack snickers, and Hiccup glares half-heartedly. Astrid allows a small smile at that, straightening up. "All right, I'm heading in," she says, turning around and throwing a wave. Jack chirps a good night after her. Just as she rounds the corner, she hears,
"So, you really weren't kidding about the whole axe to the throat thing, were you?"
followed by a groan. She smirks, then hums at the night sky. She's still a bit suspicious of him, but Jack doesn't seem malicious. A nuisance more than anything, and Odie knows she's already surrounded by those. What's one more?
"So, any plans there, boss man?"
Toughnut drawls. Hiccup looks out one of the portholes. He's still a bit fuzzy in the head from the rough landing, but squints against the pane out to the churning waves.
"This was a planned ambush. They knew the activity would draw us in. We need to figure out where we're going and break out before we get there,"
he says, eyes flinching against the sun. From the looks of it, they're heading due south. Interesting.
Yeah, and how do you suppose we do that? Snotlout grumbles. We're kind of locked up here without a dragon's Hiccup.
He turns to look back at everyone. Astrid's pacing up against the bars, mirroring Stormfly across from her. If she stops for long enough, Hiccup knows there will still be some blood beating down her eyebrow from their close arrow shot. Snotlout sitting in the corner, nursing his shoulder. Hiccup saw it take the brunt of his tumble onto the ship deck. From the way he's holding himself, it may have gotten knocked out of place. He winces slightly at the memory. Fishlegs is standing next to Snotlout, glancing down every now and then, while the twins stomp around on the other side of the cell like feral cats. The mood in the room right now is gloomy at best. Hiccup glances around at them one more time before stepping forward.
"Come on, guys. This isn't anything new for us. If we counted all the ships we've escaped from, I know we'd have a sizable armada. We can do this."
Astrid tilts her head towards him.
"They're not messing around this time, Hiccup. Look."
Hiccup steps up next to Astrid.
"Dragon-proof everything, and they've muzzled everyone, too. Even chained up Stormfly's tail, so she can't shoot spikes."
Stormfly croons across from them, bumping her head against the cage.
"I know, girl. Just hang on. I'll get you out of there," Astrid says, hands clenched vice tight against the bars.
Hiccup looks over to Stormfly's left, where Toothless's cage is. He's pawing at the tight muzzle strapped to his head. His head fins twitch against the chains, and he looks up and trills at Hiccup, eyes blown wide.
"I know, bud,"
Hiccup whispers. He leans his head against the bars, closing his eyes. They were stripped of all their weapons before being dumped down here. Dragon-proof bars, cages lined up. This whole boat was set up just for them. No guards have talked to them yet, no one throwing taunts or coming down to gloat. This is looking like a tightly run operation. Hiccup sighs. He hates those.
"Maybe if we're annoying enough, someone will come down to shut us up, and we can steal their keys,"
Roughnut suggests.
"Is the porthole big enough for someone to crawl through?"
Hiccup squeezes his eyes shut tighter.
"I say let's dig through the floorboards."
"You say that idea one more time, Toughnut, and I will stitch your mouth shut." "Well, at least when we don't turn up in Berg in a week, maybe Stoic will flip out and come find us," Snotlout grumbles. "If we're not dead by then." That's it. Hiccup's eyes fly open. He ignores everyone's looks and sprints back over to the porthole, sticking his head out. It's almost noon. Perfect. "Mind sharing with the class?"
Snotlout asks. Hiccup turns around, eyes bright.
"Let's try Roughnut's idea."
"Being annoying?"
Astrid asks, voice uncertain.
"Super annoying. Roughnut's good at nicking keys. It's worked before. If they're too professional for that, then we just sit and wait."
"Sit and wait?"
Fishlegs asked, raising an eyebrow.
"It's about midday now. When we're not back in a few hours, I know he'll come looking for us,"
Hiccup says, turning to smirk at Astrid. She gives him a confused look for a second, and then he sees understanding hit her, and she's smirking right back.
"Think he can find us?"
she asks.
Who can find us?"
Fishlegs stammers.
"The wind's driving the boat. I guarantee he can find us."
"I really hate it when you two get like this," Snotlout says. "I want you to know that."
"Yeah, I know,"
Hiccup says. He takes a look around the room again. There's confusion there and some slight annoyance, but not the despair he saw before. Good.
"Now, let's take a look at that shoulder."
Being annoying didn't work, but Hiccup knew that was a long shot to begin with. He was at least expecting someone to stomp a spear against the floor to get them to shut up, though. But not even that. It's almost impressive.
I hate it when they're professional,
Toughnut grumbles, and everyone murmurs their agreements. Hiccup lays under the porthole, standing up to check the sun's position every now and again. It's mid-afternoon, the sun glinting off the waves. He had to be looking for them by now. They should have been back at the edge hours ago.
Would you rather marry a boar or an ox? Toughnut asks.
They had slipped into silence nearly an hour ago, stretching stagnant in their creaking jail cell, until one of the twins decided they couldn't take it anymore and began asking random questions to everyone. Astrid had threatened to gut them about 5 times before the boredom even got to her, and eventually everyone just started muttering out their answers. Fishlegs even threw out a few questions himself, but soon they had cycled through everything they could think of. Now, Toughnut piped up every few minutes after ruminating strongly about new ones to ask. The ship jerks suddenly to the right, and Hiccup can hear cursing from up top. A look out the porthole shows storm clouds rolling in. He sits back down again with a sigh.
Is it a wild boar?
Snotlout asks, voice flat.
No,
Toughnut says, scrunching his eyes.
Then ox.
Toughnut rolls his head against the wall towards Hiccup.
What about you, Hiccup? He says. Boar or ox?
I would really rather not answer that.
Hiccup grumbles, eyes half lidded at the ceiling.
There's no judgment here, my friend. This is a safe space.
He rolls his eyes, then hears Toothless jump to his feet, clambering around. He furrows his eyebrows. What's got Toothless excited?
Hiccup?
A voice hisses. Hiccup shoots straight up.
Who's that?
He hears someone, Snotlout or Fishlegs, ask, but he ignores them and bolts over to the bars, poking his head out.
Over here,
he whisper shouts. He tilts his head up. Jack is dangling from one of the trap doors on the ceiling upside down, like he weighed nothing more than a snowflake. Hiccup must be delirious, because he can't help what he knows is a goofy smile spread across his face at the sight. Toothless bumps against the bars, and Jack turns to him, smiling, lifting a finger to his lips. Then he lets go and flips, landing silently on the floorboards. Everyone comes crowding up to the bars as Jack walks over.
Took you long enough,
Astrid growls out. Snotlout chokes.
Hiccup,
Fishlegs whispers sharply at him.
He's here. You can see him too, right? Gosh, I'm glad you're here. Can you get us out? The metal's dragon-proof,
Hiccup says. He knows he must look ridiculous at the moment, ragged and smiling deliriously, but he doesn't even care. Jack is a sight for sore eyes, his eyes darting over Hiccup before looking back at him, a determined glint peeking through.
I can do you one better.
Jack smirks, smile all teeth flashing. The ship lists to the side again, jerking everyone. Jack hovers to avoid getting knocked around, and Hiccup hears more yelling coming from up top, more urgently this time.
What is going on up there?
Astrid demands. Jack reaches out and clutches the lock around the cage door. Ice spatters out from his hands, seeping into the metal. It groans, crackling, whining, increasing in pitch before it splinters in his touch. His eyes are flashing crystals, nearly glowing in the dark cabin. He opens the door, then turns to start on Stormfly's cage.
It's midwinter here. They should really learn to be more careful of errant snowstorms. Those stray icebergs can be a real pain, too. Pity.
Cool,
Roughnut and Toughnut breathe. Jack flashes them a smile, then turns his head to Hiccup, sending him a wink as Stormfly's cage burst open. Hiccup really wants to kiss him. But Jack's off, breaking the rest of the locks, and Hiccup shakes his head. There's a time and a place. Time and a place. He darts over to Toothless, pulling his muzzle off and clutching the dragon's head to his chest.
Let's get out of here, bud,
he whispers, touching his forehead to the warm dragon scales. Toothless barks in agreement. Hookfang bursts from his cage, roaring. Jack yelps and poofs into snowflakes right before he's squished, swooping out of the small space.
We'll meet you in the air,
Hiccup calls out and feels a cold chill swirl around his ear. Snotlout yanks Hookfang's muzzle off and then jumps on, cackling as Hookfang bursts into flames, crashing through the trapdoor above them to a flurry of screams. Roughnut and Toughnut aren't far behind, malicious grins in place as Barf and Belch fill their cabin with gas. Astrid's mounting up on Stormfly. Fishlegs and Meatleg are jumping out of the hole in the ceiling to a loud crash that shakes the boat again.
"All right,"
Hiccup shouts, gas pooling around his knees, letting some of the manic energy fluttering on everyone's faces overtake his.
"Let's show them what dragon riders do to hunter ships."